Good afternoon. This is the Finance and Strategic Planning Committee meeting for Monday, May 13th, 2019. Looking to Council for disclosure of pecuniary interests and general nature thereof. Seeing none. I'll look for approval of minutes from April 15th, 2019. Councillor V, seconded by Councillor Hanmer. All those in favor, that's carried. That brings us to the 2018-2019 Winter Operations Review, with the triumvirate of Environment and Parks, Municipal Enforcement, and Transportation Services. I see we have Chris Kaler up to start us off. Go ahead, Chris.
Good afternoon, Chair Henry, Mayor Jaworski, members of council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff Shane and I are here to provide a brief overview on winter operations of 2018 to 2019. Transportation staff performed winter control duties commencing on November the 2nd at 11 p.m. and our shifts ended April 5th at 11 p.m. The weather. November was a challenge for us with over 20 centimeters of snow falling the week of November 11th, right in the middle of leaf collection. December, however, had low snowfall and warmer temperatures than normal. When we moved into 2019, January saw an average month for precipitation but had varying temperatures. And February, we had every type of precipitation imaginable, from ice pellets to freezing rain to snow, and no freeze-thaw cycle. March came in like a lion and left like a lion. April was cold and rainy, and I don't think we need to talk about May. Oops. As you can see, for the past calendar years, staff has spent almost all of our allotted budget for winter control. Based on the figures to date for 2019, it is likely that we will be over budget for this year unless we have a very mild November and December. From mid-November to the end of March, we operate staff around the clock 7 days a week. This winter, we had 13 zones with 14 trucks, which we are looking to increase to 14 zones and 15 trucks in 2019-2020. Additional plow trucks will be required to ensure vehicles are available for all routes. Since we are a 24-hour operation, the vehicles see a lot of use, and keeping them up and running can be a challenge. For the staff performing winter duties, there are regulations with respect to their hours of work. Drivers can only drive for 13 hours, be on duty for 14 hours, and have a minimum of 10 hours off between shifts. If we have an event that lasts over 24 hours, we can struggle to get the staff in the vehicles based on the requirements. In addition to the equipment shown, we do have 5 contract snow blowers to assist us during heavy snowfalls for the cul-de-sacs and radius corners on crescents. Our salt shed is fairly new, and here are some photos, and thanks to Keshwar for posting them on Twitter so that the public could see what our salt shed looks like. So over the years, we've used a good amount of salt, but you can see that during 2016 to 2018, we are much lower than we were between 2013 and 2015. This was our first year to declare a snow event where we did not allow any on-street parking for a 24-hour period. This allowed staff to clear the roads without having to maneuver through the parked cars. The event in February was actually extended to 60 hours to ensure that we had all the streets cleaned. For this season, there were many challenges. Weather patterns are changing each year. We dealt with significant snow in the second week of November, where we needed to remove the leaf boxes in order to salt, and then we had to transition back to the leaf collection. We had the same trucks and staff performing both leaf pickup and winter operations. The events during the month of February were a challenge as one had lasted one event lasted for 3 days. Managing staff time in the trucks, expectations of and the lack of salt deliveries made it a difficult month. We follow the maintenance standards set out by the province, and in May of 2018, changes were made that required increased service levels for various items. Each street within the city is given a road class based on the speed limit and volume of traffic. Regional roads, city arterials, and bus routes all receive top priority. Cul-de-sacs are the last on the list to be completed, and we have 24 hours after the snow has stopped to clear the roads, assuming that we have had more than 10 centimeters of snowfall. We can leave 10 centimeters of snow on the Class 5 roads, but we rarely do so. Class 4 and 5 roads also do not require clearance to the curb, providing 5 meters down the middle of the road is acceptable for snow clearance. Now I'll pass it over to Jeff for Environment and Parks information.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, Chair Henry, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. I'll be reviewing as quickly as I can the winter sidewalk and trail operations that Environment and Parks Services is responsible for. Of the approximately, can I advance the slide, that would help. Of the approximately 550 kilometers of sidewalk within Waterloo, we currently maintain about 100 kilometers of that, so slightly under a fifth. We also maintain 19 kilometers of multi-use trail, 3.6 kilometers of segregated bike lanes, as well as 40 kilometers of park pathways. And I just wanted to mention, Chris was mentioning the weather and the impact of that early November storm, and I still have staff picking up leaves as a result of that today. So our winter maintenance activities take place throughout the city on trails and sidewalks, and the following slide indicates the areas that we are assigned staff to. We obviously don't do all of the sidewalks. To do this, we utilize 8 trackless units, 3 plow trucks, 1 loader, 2 tractors with salters, and a whole lot of determination, dedication, and hard work. We run 3 shifts during the week, Monday through Friday, and on the weekends, 2 shifts. The city's current criteria for snow plowing operations on sidewalks and trails is an accumulation of 5 centimeters of snow or greater, and for salting, less than 5 centimeters of accumulation or in response to icy conditions. Our winter maintenance criteria exceeds that of the provincial minimum maintenance standards, which is a set criteria of 8 centimeters of accumulation. For the 2018-2019 winter season, we continued the Uptown King Street pilot project. The purpose of the pilot, as you'll recall, was to assist store owners with snow clearing of the newly completed streetscape, which included wider sidewalks, bike lanes, furniture zones, plantings, etc. in the uptown core. And store owners remain responsible to clear the 1.5 meter of sidewalk fronting their properties. City staff were responsible for snow clearing and salting to widen the sidewalks, as well as snow loading and removal off-site as needed, and increased snow clearing at main intersections and pedestrian crossings. The pilot has been relatively successful, I would say, and we plan to continue this winter operation into the next season. Looking ahead for the 2019-2020 winter season, we are preparing to run a trail sweeping pilot project. And the purpose of this pilot is to improve service levels on our main, most heavily used trails, to better assist when we have minor non-threshold accumulations, or 5 centimeters or less, and to potentially use less salt. However, that's to be determined. To run the pilot, we will be repurposing an older trackless unit, which was scheduled, and we tend to keep 1 surplus unit in the inventory each winter already. And staff will monitor the winter program, and we'll come back with recommendations based on our findings and customer feedback. The city receives a number of calls and inquiries, as I'm sure all of you know. This is a simple list of some of the more common ones. I won't go through all the list with you, but I did want to highlight 3 themes. The first one being timing. So there's a lot of questions on typically the question of when will the operations start and when will they finish. The second theme would be service levels. We continue to educate on our service levels, and although most are satisfied with their responses, not everyone will be. We have a number of complaints from the public with expectations of clear, dry pavement. However, we also have a number of concerns that come forward relating to over-salting and using too much salt, and sort of finding that balance with keeping us safe and protecting our environment as well. And to me, that's a great indication that our messaging is getting out there to our residents. And overall, I believe we have a very well-educated public who recognize that it is a balance. And the last theme I wanted to mention is something I refer to as the edges. There are a lot of different people involved in snow operations. This includes municipal staff, regional staff, private, commercial, and residential contractors, as well as all of the different property owners across the city. Where one group's area of responsibility meets another's is often where we run into problems, such as windrows, snow storage, freeze-thaw, puddling, ponding, freezing overnight, those kinds of issues. This issue is becoming greater as we continue to intensify and as our land resources become more scarce. There's more people in smaller areas all working to clear snow operations, where all of those activities come together can be problematic. Communication between the various stakeholders is obviously important, as is recognizing and including the operating cost when new trails, bike lanes, etc. are added, and designing these assets with maintenance in mind. We live in a 4-season climate that includes winter. The snow has to go somewhere. The most efficient and effective projects are those that are designed with winter operations in mind. And with that, I'll pass it on to Shane.
Thanks, Jeff, and through you, Chair Henry. To no surprise, my piece of this is the sidewalk bylaw piece. And so what I'll do is just briefly explain probably the 2 key pieces of of our bylaw, which is the standard itself and the time frame that accumulations of ice and snow must be removed to full width and down to concrete within 24 hours of the end of a snowfall. The challenge that we face many winters, but we found this particular winter, this past winter, is with the issue of multiple snowfalls. If we have a second event, snowfall, or in this case we had a lot of freezing rain as well, if those events occur before the first 24-hour period expires, then that clock resets, that 24-hour compliance piece resets. So the typical enforcement process, and I will highlight the word typical, is that upon receipt, a complaint is inspected within 2 business days. Now that's obviously dependent on volumes and scheduled cleanups that can take away from staff time. There's a 24-hour compliance period, so if there's a violation, a notice is left at the door requesting 24 hours or compliance within 24 hours. The reinspection process typically would take of the end of the compliance period. If the order is not complied with, then the officer coordinates a cleanup at the owner's expense, and we use an outside contractor to do this. And I will reiterate that our current process is we have 2 staff on duty from December to March. It's staggered a bit, so we have 1 officer in December and 1 officer in March, but throughout January and February, the 2 officers are on. So we have coverage for that 4-month period, sometimes 1 dedicated officer and sometimes 2. And again, I will say that I will indicate that this is a typical enforcement process, but we found that, whenever possible, and if the circumstances fit, we're there within 1 business day, but many times with higher volumes and weather conditions, it's longer than the 2-day period. And that's part of a review that I'll be talking about in a few minutes. Our statistics, I'm sorry for the font, but on your computer screens, you'll be able to see that over the last 3 years, The number of complaints received has increased substantially from last winter to this winter. The number of orders issued has increased, and the number of cleanups fluctuates. And the number of cleanups that happen, cleaned up by our contractor in charge to the property taxes or the tax rail of the owners, is dependent on the level of compliance. So the challenges is both my predecessors had indicated that this past winter was a challenge. There were several things that impacted the enforcement program for sidewalk clearing. Severe weather conditions and fluctuations in temperatures, the freeze-thaw cycle, so we would get sun shining in the daytime, we get some thaw, and then it would freeze overnight again. We had constant ice buildup, making cleanups for citizens as well as our contractors extremely difficult at times. Several freezing rain events. I referred to the difficulty in removing ice because of the thickness of the ice, and of course we had to be considerate of safety concerns both for inspection staff and contractors, but also we had received some concerns from residents who were saying, I'm trying to do this, but it's a significant safety concern for me. I need more time and that sort of stuff. So, we blend that into the way we respond. We have a contractor. Interesting to note that we've only been able to secure one contractor and one bid for the last couple of years in terms of people wanting to private contractors wanting to engage in this business. The contractor this year, through what we believe no fault of his own, experienced challenges with workload and timing, in the sense that a cleanup of snow that might take, or hard packed snow that might take an hour or so, now we're talking about several hours and repeat visits for 2 and 3 inches of ice that had to be salted and chipped away and salted and chipped away and such. So again, the contractor availability is something we're going to be looking at. The third piece is something in terms of our tracking of complaints and the calls for service and our complaints management system. We realized that it wasn't working the way it was intended to, and we found that particularly when a snow event or when a snowfall came, and then we received another event before, within that time period or before others were inspected, the tracking system had, in some of the properties, reduced their priority. So in other words, some complaints that came in earlier had received less of a priority than above, or than the ones that came in recently. And quite simply, that shouldn't have happened. We need to do better, and we're committed to doing better in sorting that out. And that, I know that various members of council had received complaints and indications that it was taking long for property addresses to be inspected, and that's a piece of it. It's not everything, but it is certainly a piece of it, and I'm here to simply say that should not have happened, and we're gonna work towards ensuring that it doesn't happen in the future. So moving forward, it's been a while since this bylaw and process has been reviewed. Certainly, this will be coming up will be my fourth winter here, and it was previous to that. I think Shamir said perhaps 2013 or 14, maybe even earlier. So we've initiated a program to review not just the bylaw standards, but our process as well. And the three large buckets of areas that we're going to take a look at is the complaints management system that I just talked about. We want to take a look at the bylaw standards. And to that end, the issue that we have with the bylaw standard is that the way it's worded, the bylaw requires that snow and ice be cleared right down to the bare concrete, and sometimes that can be a challenge. And quite simply, in extreme weather, it's very difficult and almost impractical. And there's times as well when it's even large corporations, municipalities, and the ones that we've talked about sometimes are challenged to meet that standard as well. So we want to take a look at that. The problem that we run into is if you don't have a quantitative standard like bare concrete, then it becomes a discretionary issue, and that becomes a challenge as well. So there's challenges on both sides of developing that standard. We're also going to look at resource allocations and the availability of contractor services. We know what our budget is for the dedicated staff over the winter months, and we're going to work towards seeing what availability we have to increase our resource allocations to provide a better response. Maybe have dedicated services so that we don't have officers doing 3 or 4 different things, and let staff focus on certain for areas like first response to a complaint. Another focus on the cleanups after the fact and such. So we will be apprising council of any recommendations that come out for program or come forward with program improvements. If an issue has to come to council, certainly there'll be a council report. Otherwise, if these are all the recommendations can be implemented by staff without a council decision necessary, we will still ensure that council is made aware of the program improvements prior to the winter season, which, according to right now, maybe just around the corner. So I'll leave it at that. I believe we're open for questions now. Sorry, I should say, sorry, Christine has a couple of closing comments.
So I'm sure that you've all received complaints about winter control at one point or another. So we thought we'd share a couple of the compliments. So we had a resident from Lynbrook Place indicate that the driver did an excellent job on clearing the circle, and he'd like that driver to come back and do his street every time. This picture was taken from someone on their bicycle in the middle of winter, saying that, and you can see the track list in the background, apologized for the quality of the photo. We know that he was taking it while he was riding. Another thank you was from a gentleman that lives near Sandown, and our park staff helped them with some salt. And another cul-de-sac where they were thanking us for taking away the snow very quickly. And from Cycle Waterloo Region, they provided park staff with individual thank you cards. And I think that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'm sure there are questions from council, hopefully not as many as questions from the public, because we are good at aggregating them. I'll look to Councillor Veith first.
Thank you for that, through your chair, Henry. Most of the calls that I get in the winter are from people that live on cul-de-sacs, and usually it's inconsistent method of plowing. So can you comment on that?
For cul-de-sacs, our plows will do what I'll call the stick of the street, so the straight part of the street. They cannot turn properly around the cul-de-sac bubble, so we have a second piece of equipment, which is generally a snowblower, coming in and doing it at a different time. So sometimes the plow will beat the blower, or other times the blower will beat the plow. So we can't have the same pieces of equipment there at the same time. They're doing two different duties. So it does make it a little bit more confusing for residents that live on cul-de-sacs.
So where does the snow, because that's the other thing, where the snow actually goes after the blower comes in. Some people complain that it's, that it should be in the circle, onto the circle, and sometimes it's not, or anyway, it seems so complicated to me, but those are those, and maybe it's inconsistent with the operators or the contractors, I don't know, but people get really frustrated on their cult.
So generally,
it's a very long time before we get to the city roads. And I know you mentioned we currently have, I think, 13 plows, or we're looking to get a 14th, which I would fully support. In terms of that, do they all need to be on the doing the major roads, or could some be redeployed to city roads, or does that concept just not work? And I'm just wondering if
Missed in November, not all of them, but a large amount of them that got missed in November. They sat there all winter, and they composted down really nicely. We couple areas throughout the city, cul-de-sacs actually, where there was a large amount of leaf debris still sitting there. So we had to get staff out to get out and get that loaded up and removed. And we're going to have to go back again and be reseeding because all those leaves composted through the winter and killed off a lot of the grass as well.
Okay, thanks. I'll know where to direct all those emails.
Go down.
Right.
Certainly, we could do it.
Sure. No, I'm not asking for that. I was just curious if you had it offhand.